Imagine this. It's the mid-1990s, and a young actor named Lorenz Tate is everywhere. Not just on the screen, but in living rooms, college dorms, magazine covers. He wasn't just acting, he was transforming. In Menace II Society, he became O-Dog, a terrifyingly charismatic villain whose performance left both critics and audiences stunned. Then, just 2 years later, he flipped the script with Dead Presidents, playing a traumatized Marine, raw, honest, ahead of its time. And as if that range wasn't enough, he stole hearts again in Love Jones, the poetic romantic who made vulnerability cool. 3 major films, 3 completely different roles, and not a single tabloid scandal in sight. No arrests, no embarrassing headlines, just pure talent and professionalism. Hollywood insiders were already whispering, this is the next Denzel. He had the look, the skill, and the momentum. You'd think he was bulletproof, set to dominate the next decade. But then, he disappeared. Not in a messy crash and burn way, not with a high-profile scandal, just silence, no casting calls, no roles, like someone cut the lights on a star mid-burst. The industry had no official explanation, and that's exactly why it felt so eerie. How does someone with Tate's trajectory suddenly fall off the map without a trace? By 2002, Lorenz Tate's name had all but vanished from casting shortlists. No flops, no public meltdowns, just a quiet fade that made no sense on paper. Film school professors couldn't point to a single scandal. Gossip blogs had nothing. TMZ wasn't even circling. And fans? They were confused. How does a man with 3 critically acclaimed films and 0 drama suddenly stop getting calls? Some insiders blamed audience fatigue, but that didn't sit right. How could fans be tired of someone they weren't even seeing anymore? Others suggested maybe Tate was just too clean, that his lack of controversy made him less bankable in a media landscape addicted to chaos. But the deeper you look, the harder it is to buy that excuse. Hollywood loves a marketable, clean-cut star, especially one that appeals across generations and demographics. So why ice him out? That's when the whispers started. Not from tabloids, but from the underground, the places where comics like Katt speak truths the mainstream avoids. It wasn't about talent, it wasn't about timing. According to Katt, it was about something else entirely. Something darker, a test, a ritual. And Tate? He allegedly said no. If anyone in Hollywood has a reputation for saying the things no one else dares to, it's Katt Williams. Loud, sharp, unfiltered, he doesn't whisper, he detonates. And for years, he's been warning us. Some actors don't fall off, they get pushed. According to Katt, there's a hidden toll for Black actors trying to rise in Hollywood. He doesn't call it superstition, he calls it a humiliation ritual. And it starts, he says, with a simple test. A Black man in a dress. Not for comedy, not for the role, but to see if you'll bend. Because if you'll do that, they know you'll do anything. It's not about the wardrobe, it's about control, compliance. Katt points to a long list of Black entertainers who blew up after donning a dress on screen. He's not accusing them, he's questioning the system. What happens if you say no? What happens if you refuse to play along? In his eyes, the answer is chilling. The invitations stop coming. Quietly, no phone calls, no offers. You won't even realize you've been blacklisted until your agent stops answering and the scripts dry up. There's no proof. That's the point. The punishment leaves no fingerprints. So when Lorenz Tate, squeaky clean, critically acclaimed, rising fast, suddenly vanished without a trace, Katt didn't think it was a coincidence. He thought Tate had refused the test. To understand what happened to Lorenz Tate, you have to understand one of Hollywood's unspoken rules, one that director Spike Lee summed up perfectly. There's room for exactly one impeccable Black leading man at a time. It sounds absurd until you look at the numbers. Studios routinely greenlight 5, 6, even 10 blockbuster projects a year with white male leads. But when it comes to Black men in leading roles, it's a bottleneck. One major face per era, maybe 2 if the climate allows. In the 2000s, it was Denzel, then Will Smith, briefly Michael B. Jordan, but rarely more than one standing tall at a time. Why? Because maintaining that one-slot system keeps power and salaries under control. If too many Black actors are seen as bankable, the market changes, the math shifts, the pay expectations rise, and that's where Lorenz Tate becomes a threat. He wasn't just talented, he was undeniable. Respected by critics, loved by fans, drama-free. A studio's dream, on the surface. But dreams like that are dangerous when they challenge an old structure. If Tate demanded the same pay as his white counterparts, it would expose the lie behind the market rate excuse. If he proved that more than one black man could dominate screens without controversy, it would crack the ceiling wide open. Hollywood couldn't afford that, so instead of rewriting the rules, they quietly enforced them. Tate didn't get caught up in scandal, he got caught up in a quota. Lorenz Tate didn't vanish quietly. He watched, waited, and when the time was right, he spoke. No drama, no bitterness, just facts. In a 2025 morning show interview promoting Powerbook 2, Tate broke it down in a single sentence. We work twice as hard to get half as much, and that math never adds up. That wasn't just a soundbite. It was a jab at the entire industry, and Tate wasn't alone. Just months earlier, Taraji P. Henson broke down in tears during an interview, revealing that she nearly quit acting over how little she was being paid despite her success. Years before that, Monique spoke out against Netflix's pay disparity and was instantly labeled difficult. She lost work. She was mocked, blackballed. The message was clear: challenge the system, and the system will challenge you, quietly but relentlessly. Tate, however, didn't just complain. He offered a solution. Stop asking for seats at someone else's table. Build your own. Own the studios. Own the distribution. Own the power. We don't govern the platforms, he said. That's why we fight for crumbs. It wasn't just a critique, it was a call to arms for black creatives. But even with this bold stance, Tate didn't name names. He didn't point fingers. He stayed clean, careful. Why? Because he knew the consequences of crossing the invisible line. Hollywood doesn't need to destroy your reputation, they just have to dim your spotlight. And for a while, that's exactly what they did. While many dismissed Lorenz Tate's disappearance as an industry oversight or bad luck, Katt Williams kept pointing in another direction, one far less visible and far more disturbing. In his now infamous podcast clips and interviews, Katt didn't just suggest there was a humiliation ritual, he claimed it was only the first step. According to him, what followed was a world of private ceremonies, symbolic sacrifices, and deeply unsettling rites of passage. Not superstition, not metaphor. Actual acts that resemble ancient secret society traditions, where control is solidified not through contracts, but through compromise. Williams spoke of kissing the ring in private, of pledges made behind closed doors, of careers traded for silence. It sounds like a thriller plot, but the pattern is hard to ignore. Talented, scandal-free black actors who refuse to play along often vanish, only to reappear years later under more controlled conditions, if at all. The streets whisper about actors being offered fame in exchange for something darker, something they can never undo. True believers link it all to folklore, centuries-old tales of entertainment guilds mimicking secret societies. Skeptics call it exaggeration, a shorthand for selling out or signing bad deals. But even skeptics admit one thing: once someone gives in, they rarely rebel. Because the higher they go, the more they have to lose if the truth ever gets out. So, what happens if someone like Lorenz Tate, raised on Midwestern faith and dignity, says no? The doors close, the light fades, and the world forgets. Unless you're paying attention, you can shut someone out, but you can't erase raw talent. And Lorenz Tate, he didn't need permission to rise again. In 2014, everything shifted. Streaming exploded, the old Hollywood gatekeepers started losing their grip, and new power players emerged. People who remembered Tate, people who respected what he stood for. Enter 50 Cent. The rapper turned mogul handpicked Tate for the role of Councilman Rashad Tate in Power. A smooth-talking, sharp-scheming politician dripping with ambition and secrets. It was a role that felt custom-built, because it was. And once again, Tate did what he does best. He stole every scene. Ratings soared, audiences were locked in. And this time, Tate wasn't just acting, he was executive producing. Behind the camera, at the table, calling shots. His company, Tateman Entertainment, started financing indie stories, funding projects that didn't need Hollywood's green light. He went from chasing roles to owning them, from being boxed out to building his own sandbox. No, he's probably never going to lead a $200 million Marvel movie, but he owns back-end points now. He controls narratives. And perhaps most importantly, he sleeps at night. While other celebrities grapple with leaked tapes, extortion plots, and PR rehab spirals, Lorenz Tate walks into fan conventions unguarded. No handlers, no scandals, no fear, because he never gave them leverage. Lorenz Tate's story isn't just a comeback tale, it's part of a bigger shift, a silent rebellion, a movement made up of artists who chose integrity over instant fame, and somehow still won. Look around. Dave Chappelle walked away from a $50 million Comedy Central deal because he felt his values were being compromised. People called him crazy until he returned with a Netflix deal on his terms, with ownership, creative freedom, and the final word. He now holds 9 specials and a cult following that never left his side. Issa Rae built Insecure from YouTube roots and flipped it into an 8-figure Warner Media deal, with ownership clauses that would have been unthinkable a decade ago. Monique, once blacklisted for speaking out, sued Netflix and survived the fallout. She's now back on tour, still bold, still standing. All these artists share one thing in common. They stepped away from the system to create their own. And they prove something vital. You don't have to sell out to cash in. Lorenz Tate fits this model perfectly. He lost clout, yes, but he gained something far more valuable: sovereignty. His decisions aren't filtered through PR teams or studio agendas. He picks the roles, funds the projects, and owns the results. This new playbook doesn't just challenge Hollywood's rules, it rewrites them. The power is shifting from gatekeepers to creators, from contracts to content, and every time someone like Tate wins without compromising, the old system loses another grip on the next generation. The message is clear. You can be blacklisted from the mainstream and still build your own empire, quietly, fiercely, and on your own damn terms. By now, you've seen the pattern. Lorenz Tate's rise wasn't derailed by talent, timing, or scandal. It was something deeper, something unspoken. And now the question isn't just, what happened to Lorenz Tate? It's, how many others are we losing the same way? Was Tate pushed out because he refused to bow to a system built on humiliation and silence? Or was he simply too vocal, too proud, too unwilling to accept half the pay for twice the work? And what if both are true? What if the occult rumors, the symbolic rituals, the pay gaps, and the unwritten Hollywood quotas are all different faces of the same machine, designed to maintain control, suppress power, and reward compliance over character? It's easy to call it a conspiracy until you notice how often the same story plays out. The same types of artists silenced, the same sudden disappearances, the same uncomfortable truths hiding behind perfect red carpet smiles. Lorenz Tate didn't just survive the machine, he exposed its playbook, quietly, strategically, with dignity. So here's the real question. When the next actor fades from the spotlight without explanation, will you assume they lost relevance? Or remember the ritual nobody wants to admit exists? Because once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. In a world where viral scandals can erase decades of work, staying clean isn't just rare, it's revolutionary. Lorenz Tate chose the harder path. No shortcuts, no selling out, no secret handshakes behind closed doors, just talent, discipline, and a refusal to be owned. He didn't become the face of a billion-dollar franchise. He didn't trend every week. But what he did become is far more dangerous to the system, a living example that you don't need to play by their rules to win. He still acts, he still produces. He walks through airports without bodyguards, meets fans face to face, and sleeps with both eyes closed. No hush contracts, no buried secrets, no strings attached. And that, in today's entertainment landscape, is real power. So now, it's on you, the viewer, the audience, the culture. Ask the hard questions, look past the surface, pay attention to who disappears and why. Don't just celebrate the loudest stars. Start valuing the ones who chose integrity over easy fame. Because if we don't, the machine keeps running. The rituals stay hidden. And the next Lorenz Tate gets quietly erased before they even hit their stride. Drop your theory in the comments. Speak your truth. And if you believe stories like this need to be told, subscribe. Because what Hollywood buries, we dig up. And next up, we're unpacking another black star who dodged the same silent blacklist and the brutal cost they paid just to stay whole.